G'day everyone, welcome to the latest edition episode of Market Watch. It's proudly brought to you by TopSport.com.au. Well, what do they say about Queensland? Beautiful one day, tropical cyclone the next. We hope everyone who has been impacted is very, very safe. However, just the day that Tristan and Gerard invite me up to Queensland, come on Jimmy, come on up. It's beating torrential rain everywhere. Just incredible. So literally everyone, please stay safe. But quite incredible what we've seen along the eastern seaboard of New South Wales and Queensland. Remember, if you like this podcast, you can subscribe. You can do that at Spotify, at Apple. We'll put it up on YouTube as well, Whooshka, wherever it is you listen to or watch this. Make sure you're subscribing to that so it's delivered straight into your inbox. The number one seed at TopSport.com.au is Tristan Merlehan. Gerard Condon is here from Reading the Play. The usual suspects is the best way to describe them. How are we this week, gentlemen? Are we a little rain-sodden, I believe?
We are, and I'm not one to talk about skin complexion, but Jimmy, you look a little bit paler than normal after that flight up here this morning. So I know it was a little bit rocky for you, and it was a little bit of discussion whilst we were trying to work out the time to shoot today whilst you're in the air. So it was good, but we're excited. We've got the footy starting this time next week. We will be very close to the first game underway. So it's great time of the year.
Well, we had thunderclaps, power, electrical storms, lightning, then power blackouts, and then Jimmy landed. I'm not sure which had to do with the other, but anyway, here we are. At least we can record and get into it. Gentlemen, we've only got 8 days to go to the NRL kicks off. I'm like a kid lost in a little lolly shop at the moment, trying to get everything ready to rock and roll. And the other really good news is we've decided the first lunch bet to start the season. And I think Jimmy's words a week ago were mission impossible, and the Dragons didn't even need the handicap.
Don't know what made me feel more sick. The plane, it felt like a 6-seater Cessna bouncing around everywhere, and I just had to check that there was the sick bag in front of me, or the performance of some of those defensive edges for the South Sydney Rabbitohs at Mudgee last week. Anyway, well done, Gerard. And just to confirm, I actually gave my $50. I might have given a little top up actually to Chris and the team at Pass It On Clothing, because I'm in awe of the job that they do there with the homeless on the streets of Sydney and Parramatta and beyond. So happy to do that.
Well, just so the subscribers know, Jimmy, added a little more flavour to our lunch bets this year. Not only is there a little banter, and there'll end up being some lunch or dinners along the way, the loser of any particular lunch bet also has to kick in a $50 donation to Pass It On Clothing. And along the way, I now end up with a betting challenge every week with a prominent Brisbane Broncos supporter. So there's another $50 riding every week on a Broncos result, and we're using the TopSport line for each of those games. So, dear oh dear, this rugby league season, well, the good thing is there's a lot of money we're going to raise for charity.
Absolutely. So just before we go forward, let's look back. How is it that I tip a winner over the course of the weekend and somehow I'm putting $50 into the charity? Anyway, that's very elegant. She got the job done. She's an out-and-out star. Moanga, Gerard, another second for you. So you didn't run second on the NRL bet, of course, the Dragons getting home comfortably. And I think might have changed the opinion of plenty of tipsters. We'll get to that very shortly. Do we have a balance, Tristan, for our Pass It On Clothing year to date?
We definitely do. And yeah, as you say, very elegant, ultra impressive. And well done for finding a few winners on the weekend, boys. 2,823 we've got in the kick now. So it's a really good start, because this time last year we hadn't even discussed the charity concept, and we've already got 2,800 in the kick with a bit of runway now with the footy season upon us. So it's great to be able to, as you say, they do an absolutely phenomenal job there, and it's great to be able to support the charity. And there might even be a discussion. We're just formalising things. I had another group that I do a little chat with that might be wanting to do another charity display with Pass It On Clothing as well. So that's great. It's really spreading the word, and it's great that really people are really keen to support such a worthy cause.
No doubt. And just on the lunch bets, I don't know if you can see that, viewers, but now we've got Gerard, who's done the table. Right, he's done the for and against, and he's because remember last year where it just got when I was down -7, it was sort of like whatever. Bring me the entree. But now it's being recorded for posterity. Hey, lots of stuff.
Just before you go on, Jimmy, I just get the feeling, when you're at a basketball game and the crowd have to stand up and stand on their feet until the opposing side gets a basket. Mate, maybe we should bring a rule in like that. While someone's on a duck egg and they've got a one in the losers column, they've got to do the podcast standing or just something else to add a little bit of spice. So to drag things out a little bit further.
Well, we did need to introduce a little bit of a table this year because there was somebody that just kept sliding and sliding at the back end of last year. And I don't know, Tristan, we were trying to keep count whether it was a -7 or a -8 or a -9. And so anyway, we'll keep a table this year and it's all there for display.
It reminded me of the great Kerry Packer, Jimmy. He was, when he got in that hole, he just kept, let's go again, let's double the stakes and let's lunch bets for everyone. So now we've got it all documented and the charity component's going to keep it honest, I think.
I'm waiting for the Texan millionaire to be dancing around and I ask him to toss I'll toss you for it. He's 200 million. Anyway, not this week. Hey, before we get into some of the other talking points, I think it's really interesting, Tristan. Adam Reynolds, as it stands, has tested positive for COVID. So it would seem so unfortunate for everyone, Broncos supporters, Kevy Walters and Adam in particular, won't be turning out for the game against the Rabbitohs. What has that done to the market?
Yeah, the market's moved significantly on the back of that news. As you say, we haven't got team lists yet, but the assumption the market and our traders have made is that he won't be lining up on game day there for the Broncos, which is such a shame. But we opened the market $3.15, the Broncos, about $1.40 the Rabbitohs. The Bronx actually got backed in early. There was a bit of support from 7.5 into a flat 6. Back in February. So the market got to a flat 6, about $1.45 the Broncos. But now the market's gone from a flat 6 to 10.5. It's moved 4.5 points and it's $1.30 the Rabbits, $3.50 the Broncos. So a very, very strong move. I think it's something we're going to have our guard up. Punters are going to have to be aware of. There's going to be movements like this a lot throughout the course of the year. We all understand the changes to the team list where they're going to be able to carry those 5 reserves for deeper into the season, which is going to be fascinating because you could normally get a read on who was in and who was out and who was in doubt by who stayed on that extended bench as they drop players back. But it's going to be a little bit more confusing, I think, because they're probably going to have to carry halves and backline players just to cover any shuffles. So it's going to be a fascinating start to the season, just trying to understand how all this works.
And if coaches can add to that confusion, they will. They'll exploit that as much as they possibly can. We will have our top 8. For each of us, we'll have our long-term bets. We'll look at some improvers and maybe some teams on the slide. We'll look at point scorers and try scorers, all that coming up a little bit later on in the podcast. There's going to be an incredible test series. It's the first time in 24 years that Australian men's has toured Pakistan. This will be really interesting from a market point of view, Tristan. I wish your traders all the very best with this because trying to get a read on it. They say Rawalpindi is seam friendly. What does that mean for the makeup of the Australian side? What does it mean for Pakistan? Now we've got a player from Pakistan and a staff member from Australia tested positive for COVID about 24 hours out from the start of the first test match. How on earth have you put a market together for this, mate?
Been very, very difficult. The boys had their work cut out, but they've got 260 odd markets, so they've backed themselves in to get it right. We've got Pakistan to win the match at $2.46. We've got Australia at $2.64 and the draw at $3.60. Everything I'm hearing is that the deck looks a bit of a road, so I'm expecting there's going to be plenty of runs scored. We know Pakistan's without a couple of their star bowlers as well. So I think that brings Australia right into this game. I think it brings a draw into the match, to be honest. And I just think there could be some runs scored by both sides, just with the way the series is playing out as well. I just get the feeling they might not be as aggressive about ensuring they go for that win early on in the piece. So I just think the 360 about the draw represents really, really strong value. As we say, 260 odd markets on the game. The high bats for the Aussies, Marnus Labuschagne, the favourite at $3.50. Steve Smith, $4. Warner, $4.60. And Usman Khawaja, $5 in what'll be a great place for him to bat. Travis Head, $7.50, despite being the man of the series in the Ashes. The most wickets markets is very interesting because we're so uncertain about who's going to be playing. Nathan Lyon, $3.60. Paddy Cummins, $3.80. Hazelwood, 4.40. Jager at $4.60. Mitch Swepson at 5 and Boland at 5. So it's a lottery where they all sit.
Yeah. The Steve Smith was the one they were all talking about. And the other thing for leading run scorer, and the other one was series score. Have you got a correct series scoreline market up there as well, Tristan?
Just having a look at that now. The boys are still working through. Here we go. Test series betting. Yes. So the series score, we've got 1-1 draw at $4.60. Pakistan 2-0 at $6.50. Pakistan 2-1 at $6.50. The Aussies 2-1 at $6.75. And Australia 2-0 at $8. So whitewash for Pakistan $10 and Australia $14 for the 3-0 scoreline. Just to win the series, it's $2.20 Pakistan, $2.55 the Aussies, and $4.40 the drawn series.
NRLW kicked off last week. We've got another triple header at Wynn Stadium this week as well. We said, hey, hold fire, because it's really hard to get a read on that. I don't know how the market's responded, but once again, the Broncos have won 3 straight premierships and they come out of the blocks. The Roosters are touted as being another strong side, and they've put the cleaners through them in round 1. Ali Brigginshaw, I get up here to Brisbane, and as much as there's Adam Reynolds, there's Ali Brigginshaw up in lights as well. She's amazing, and they're going to look like they're hard to beat again this season, Tristan.
They do, and geez, there was some strong activity on the first week of football. The Broncos are now into $1.90 favourites to win the title. The Roosters out to $4.40. The Titans $8, the Eels $8, and the Dragons, who were ultra impressive. Jamie Sauer led Dragons $8.50. The Knights out to $21. So it was a really intriguing round of football. I was sitting on the couch watching it, and yeah, I hope it continues to grow as we get more and more teams. It'll only continue to grow that fan base. And yeah, as you say, the Broncos look so hard to beat.
Tamika Upton is an out-and-out star. She's a genuine superstar of that competition. Great to see her in action as well. Maddie Studden with the match-winning field goal for the Parramatta Eels. First time a field goal's ever been kicked in NRLW. So that is a beauty for Maddie Studden. All right, gents, let's get into the NRL Trials. I'll ask you, Gerard, first up. I know you were impressed with the St George Illawarra Dragons on Saturday night, but was there anything else that caught the eye over the 7 trial games that we saw over the previous weekend?
I guess the no particular standouts. I mean, I thought there were a few teams that looked to just really treat them like trials, and I thought that the Roosters were one, the Panthers were another. A couple of sides that were very disappointing were, clearly the Bulldogs. I just haven't seen anything there to suggest there's any real improvement on where they're going. I like the look of the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys are up and about, and I'll touch on them in a moment. I mean, I've got them rated down the bottom of the table, but I do think with a little bit of luck and a little bit of stability that they're a side I have a positive question mark on improving their position. I think there's a few others trying to sort out key positional roles as you would with trials. Eagles look very forward, very fit, very ready to go. I thought they got a little lazy in the second half of that trial last week, but I think the majority of teams look ready to go. And there's some nice green shoots, and a few sides are looking for green shoots. So just 10 days and counting, and they're all training, and they're all ready to go.
All right, we'll get to our top 8s very shortly. Tristan, any changes to the market based on those couple of trial games? And as Gerard said, some sides taking it more seriously than others, and others finalising positional placements for the year. Any moves in the market?
Yeah, and then obviously you've got the unfortunate injuries as well that kick in. I think it was a real shame for the Raiders to lose Jamal Fogarty as well, who was obviously looking to fill into those half spots. So that's sort of, I thought they represented a little bit of value for the top 8 a while back, but they've firmed into $1.65 now to miss the 8, to make the 8 there. They've drifted out a touch. So those are the sort of things we've been looking for. Like, obviously, it's difficult to get a really true read on the way that teams are taking the trials. But in terms of the Premiership betting, we've still got Melbourne clear favourites at $5, Penrith $5.50, the Roosters $6, Manly $8, South Sydney 10, and the Eels 12. The Dragons there 40-1. They firmed up a touch, but it's mainly focused on these special markets that we've touched on a few times. The season wins, the over and under ladder position, and there's been a little bit of move there. And the one that I'm sure we'll touch on later, but the regular season handicap seen a plonk for the St George Illawarra Dragons plus 15.5 into $11 now. So plenty of people getting interested. I think there'll be a lot of further interest as we get closer to the season in the next few days, particularly once those first teams are announced on Tuesday.
I know you blokes like to have a go at me about this, but I did think that Jackson Hastings made a huge difference to the West Tigers in that game. And I know it was against the Roosters side that were probably under strength, but I thought there were some really good signs for the West Tigers with what Jackson Hastings was doing there. I don't think they make the 8, but that's some positives there, Gerard.
Yeah, I thought the same, Jimmy. And I thought it took a while for him to actually end up getting the ball as first receiver. Once he did, he then started to play both sides of the ruck. I think the opening 20 or more minutes, he was predominantly playing on the right and seeing very little ball. When he took control as the key playmaker, I thought it made a significant difference. I thought Gilliard actually played very well, and he's come back from a major injury about 18 months ago, and all of a sudden looks to have a spring in his step and a touch of speed. I think he's a positive addition. But Peachy clearly will make a bit of a positive impact. For mine, I just thought as that trial went on, it became very clear to something that I've touched on a couple of times with you, Jimmy, on radio and on the podcast over recent weeks. I would have been moving Brooks on. I would have letting Hastings take the reins, working out whether Peachy plays a patch-up role at number 6 and or somebody else. The young fella that came on late in the game looks to have some promise in the future. I just think they're a better side with him running the show and running the ball. So, yes, some positive upside for the Tigers.
Jock Madden is the young guy that came on and played well. I thought Peachy's passing game was horrible, but the idea of what he was doing was the thing that worked well. All right, Gerard, why don't you start us off? Give us your top 8 for season 2022.
Jimmy, as I've touched on in the past, I use a rating method that I've used for the last 9 years. So what I've done is take where I thought each of these sides across the top all 16 finished late last year, ins and outs, adjustments for a whole range of different things, then looked at what I think might impact across the draw. So I will say, just touching on the draw for a moment, Jimmy, that it's always going to be an anomaly that we've got 24 games and we've got 16 sides. Everybody's not going to play everybody else twice, nor on a home and away basis. But looking at the draw, it probably looks the most fairest draw right across all 16 sides that I've looked at over the last probably 8 or 9 years. And there's only a couple of teams that probably have significant advantage. The Titans are certainly one of them, and the team probably with the greatest disadvantage is the Eels. But my top 5, I thought, was pretty clear, in particular the top 4. So I've got the Storm on top, then the Panthers, then the Sea Eagles, then the Roosters, then the Rabbitohs. Now, across those, I've got the Storm pretty much similar to the benchmark of where they finished last year. I have the Panthers down just a touch, even though they went on to win the grand final. I think they've got 3 key outs, and I just factor in whether the hunger and desire is still as strong for them. We'll wait and see. But they're almost side by side with the Storm. Then I have the Sea Eagles. Certainly, I've improved them. I found the Roosters very difficult to rate because they had so many key injury outs and overachieved last year. I'm basically going with about a similar position to where I had them starting last year. The team that's probably the biggest down, but I still have them 5th on the table, is the Rabbitohs. I've marked them down 3.5% on where their rating was to finish last season, and remembering that they were in the grand final. I think the Bennett change and the Reynolds out are just very significant factors for mine. Let's also not forget, in the 34 years that Bennett's been a coach in the NRL, only one club that he has left the following year made a top 4. And that happens to be about 33 years ago when he left, or 32 years ago when he left the Raiders. So a big void to fill there. I've got the Eels sitting in the bottom half of the table. I've got a bit of a question mark over the Eels. I've marked them down about 1.5% on where I had them last year. And their last 2 seasons have had, in my opinion, a very soft draw. This year they have probably one of the most difficult draws. And I'll say that they played 13 games against last year's top 8. They also play, of those games, 10 against last year's top 5. And that's the highest number of any team right through the draw. So they certainly have a question mark on them competing at that top end, and they're going to have 10 games against those top 5 sides. I have 2 teams moving up and 2 teams moving out, which traditionally history also tells us is about what might happen. I have the Dragons moving up and I have the Sharks moving up. I think they're in the fight for the bottom of the 8. I have the Titans moving out. I have the Knights moving out. I have the Raiders in that log jam. So, from the Eels, the Dragons, the Sharks, the Raiders, the Titans, the Knights, I don't have a lot between them. But I'm going with the Eels at 6th, the Dragons at 7th, the Sharks at 8th, and then Raiders, Titans, Knights. Below them, I have the Broncos, the Tigers. I don't see a great deal of improvement in the Bulldogs. I have a question mark around the Cowboys that I think they could well improve with a bit of stability and a good run with injuries. I think they'll also pick up more wins at home than most expect. And I'm very surprised about the market position on the Warriors. I've marked them down 2.5% on where they were at the end of last year. And I thought I was generous only marking them down 2.5%. And we'll touch on it in a moment, but I was very surprised that they were $10 for the spoon. I'm not suggesting they're roll gold good things for the spoon, but I had them closer to a $3 mark for the bottom of the table than a $10 mark.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? We've got to remember the gulf that appeared last year between the top sides and then the next sides in the top 8, and then those at the bottom of the top 8 that were grouped together with a whole bunch of teams. Tristan, your top 8 for season 2022.
Yeah, I'm pretty similar to Gerard. I've got the Storm first. I've got the Roosters moving up to 2nd. I've got the Panthers 3rd. I've got the Seagulls 4th. I then have the Eels 5th. I've got the Rabbitohs 6th. They worry me. I just see, you think that I had a lot of concerns about them leading into this season, and I think the trial game, as we know, it's a trial, but I just feel like the areas that we thought they would still be solid in, they probably weren't. So I've got a concern over the Rabbitohs going forward. They might gel a bit later in the season, but I've got them dropping down to 6th. I've got the Sharks jumping up to 7th, and I've got the Titans finishing in the top 8. I've just snuck them in. I think it's going to be a very logjam finish. I had the Raiders vying for a spot in the 8, but I think the loss of Fogarty is going to hurt them. I've got the Dragons in at 9th, the Raiders 10th. I've got the Knights 11, Broncos 12, and then I think that logjam down the bottom, I think the Bulldogs are going to improve, but whether they can get out of that bottom 3 or 4 is going to be tricky. So I've got them 13th, Tigers 14th, Warriors 15, and the Cowboys. I've got, unfortunately, the Cowboys running last, but I did like what they did in the trial too. So it's a fascinating thing. I still think we've got a couple of teams up the top, but I think maybe where last year we had our 4 or 5 top teams, I think maybe there's a closer gap between 5 down to probably 12 or 13, and then even a couple of those teams, if they can start the season well. I think teams starting the year well is going to be so key, because it's going to keep them, in the hunt, like what we saw with the Dragons last year, where despite them performing very poorly at the back end of the year, they won those few games early, and it really kept them in the sniff for the 8. So I think it's going to be a fascinating year, and yeah, we've got pretty similar top 8s there.
So the application of the rules of the game and the laws is really what created a real shift last year, wasn't it? It exacerbated that gulf. So again, that's going to be really interesting to see how the referees and indeed the NRL do it. My top 8 is exactly the same as Gerard's, but we've mixed it up a bit. And obviously you're obligated to put the Titans in there since you've minted a new sponsorship deal with them. So fair enough. We understand that, Tristan. I've got the Storm on top for me. I think the Panthers, the Roosters and the Seagulls round out your top 4. And the thing with the Seagulls, and to a lesser degree the Panthers, but certainly the Panthers there with Nathan Cleary. The Seagulls, if Tom Traboyevich is injured, then it's all bets off. Like it's just that impactful on that team, even though they've got the Australian halfback there. That's how impactful he is. I've got the Eels finishing 5th. I'm worried about the Rabbitohs. You mentioned Reynolds and Bennett, Jaden Sewer, Dane Gagai. These guys are really strong contributors for them, and they're not there. Let's not underestimate Braden Burns is not there. So there's another centre out of there. And I thought Jackson Paulo struggled the games that we've seen him Josh Mansour, I think, his best footy's behind him. So that's a challenge for Jason Demetrio. I think the Sharks are improvers. It's a concern around Wade Graham and the injuries he keeps picking up, but I think they've got enough class in that side. And I would be bullish about Fitzgibbon as a coach, certainly from a defensive point of view. And then the Dragons. This is the one where I fly against the market. I'm looking at my teams that are just outside that, and I agree with you on that, Tristan. Raiders, Tigers, Knights, Titans, Broncos, I think all there or thereabouts. And so if one of them were to jump in for the Dragons, but I think at the price, the Dragons, my bottom sides again, the Cowboys, the Warriors, and the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs really worry me. And I mentioned it during the course of this week. The Bulldogs can win twice as many games as they did last week and improve their for and against dramatically and still run last. And that's the challenge that Trent Barrett has at the Bulldogs at the moment. So that's my top 8. Storm, Panthers, Roosters, Seagulls, Eels, Rabbitohs, Sharks, Dragons.
A couple of points there too, Jimmy. Please, can we have stability around the rules? It appears that we're going to start now with what we expect we're going to start with. Let's hope that that's the case and we don't have any major shake-ups. Looking at the trials, it still frustrates me that we have all this rubbish carry on in the play ball, push and shove as opposed to wrestle now. And it's going on because the referees don't penalise it now. And a 6 again means nothing in cleaning that crap up. So that's one area that still frustrates the hell out of me. The other is, you're right, around the key elements around that draw. And I come back to that point of how many times each of these teams play those that are in the top 5. I mean, if you're at the bottom of the table or trying to get yourself into the bottom of the top 8, and you've got 8 games against those top 5 teams, that's going to make it damn difficult for you. And if you're also the Broncos and you've got 14 games against the teams that are in the top 8 last year, again, that's going to make it difficult for you. So the team that's advantaged there is the Titans. They only have 6 games against those top 5 teams. Now, they did struggle to win against the teams above them last year. That gives them a slight advantage against some others because they've got less games against the Storm, the Panthers, the Eagles, the Roosters, the Rabbitohs, and only 10 games against last year's top 8. So my question mark, as I've touched on over recent weeks around the Titans, is if the 9 and the 7 can do the job. They've got a very good pack of forwards. They've got some skill and some attack. But that's a bit of an issue for me. But I could only really find 2 areas in the marketplace that I wanted to try and bet against my numbers. I thought the Dragons have been well undervalued by the market. The market expected them to be about a 25% chance of making the 8. I have them somewhere around a 50% chance of making the 8. And the others I touched on a moment ago, was the Warriors. I thought the Warriors were far closer to a 30% chance of running at the bottom of the table than where the markets had them. So they were the 2 that I've wanted to bet around this week and would be my longer term bet. So the Dragons to make the top 8, you could have got as good as $3.80 earlier in the week. They're still somewhere around $3.20. I thought the Dragons most wins across the season. The market has had them either 7.5 or 8.5. I mean, I expect that to get into the 8, they're going to need 10 or 11, possibly 12 wins. That's certainly above 8.5. And most losses I had for the Warriors.
I think and they're all very valid points. And I just wanted to touch on one of the points you made with the Rabbitohs. The thing we've got to be really mindful of this season is the depth that's going to be required, because there's going to be more so than ever players that need to come into teams. And it's not just looking at that top 17 list and that's where we're going to see the bottom fall out of this. So I'd suggest when obviously we're discussing futures now, but it's a really good opportunity to look at opportunities throughout the course of the season when you can see teams that might be losing players or without extended players for a period, to be able to pick up opportunities there. So, and on that Sharks point, Jimmy, I think Dale Finucane's going to be one of the buys of the year. I think the leadership he's going to bring, which was probably the impact that Wade Graham lacked at times when he was off, when he was injured. And I think having him to complement that, and hopefully Wade plays a few more games this year, but I think that's going to be a key component. But yeah, I can't argue with any of those items that you refer to. The Dragons do look value. You've both got them in the top 8. I've got them running 9th. So they're a lot longer than that in the betting market. So when you can get when you can get what price have we got them? When you can get over $3 about them to make the top 8, and we've all got them no worse than 9th. It's a good opportunity. The market I'm looking at that I feel represents a little bit of value. I hate to say that I'm on the same side as Jimmy here, but I really think the Tigers are undervalued in the market as well. And I'm not going to take them to make the 8, but I'm going to take them over 7.5 wins at even money. I think there's going to be a group that finish close together at the bottom of the ladder. I don't see a team dropping out like they did last year. So I'd be surprised if they don't win 8 games. So I have them as my value, as my bet that I would be going for. And then the one that I look to as a pure spec is I would take, even though I've got them in the top 8, I would have a little something on the bunnies to miss the 8 at $3.70. I think they're a big chance of dropping out. I think they make the 8 more times than they don't, but at $3.70, I think they represent a little bit of value to miss the 8, because I think if the wheels get a bit wobbly, and their lack of depth could come to the forefront.
And I think just touching on that too, Tristan, a lot of the listeners right now are going to be going, well, weren't the Rabbitohs in the grand final last year? And that's exactly right. But these are the things that you've got to try and look at. Let's go back 2 years ago. We had the Raiders 3 years ago in a grand final, 2 years ago in the top 4. We all had them in our top 6 last year. And for one reason or another, the wheels fell off, and they at one stage had a disastrous run and certainly missed the 8. So there are going to be teams that absolutely surprise us out of nowhere. And I agree with you. I think the Rabbitohs are one of those that has a major question mark over them. And for the other for mine is the Eels. I'm just not convinced that the Eels are going to be anywhere around that top 6 and could well be falling.
The only thing I will say on the back of, just to add to Dale Finucane, they say Cam McGuinness is amazing. He's so professional in what he does on the field and off the field. He's already made a huge impact there. Throw in the likes of Dale Finucane, and we know what Craig Fitzgibbon is getting there from his senior players at the Sharks. One thing I will say about the Dragons, and this goes towards not only the coaching but the selection. And I think it's really important that Coach Griffin selects the right players in the right positions at the right times. And there's going to be stages that physically, that guys like Tyrell Sloan and Junior Moan, and they're going to be under pressure. Even Zach Lomax, he came off on the weekend and he just had a little twinge. And you just think, well, you just got to make sure you get as many games out of them as you can. And they're only kids, so but they are super talented. And I thought Ben Hunt's performance too was a really good sign towards how he's going to be leading that side. The one thing I will say about the Rabbitohs, and we talk about the depth, if you can get 22 games, maybe 20 out of Latrell Mitchell at fullback, like I won't go as far as to say he has as much impact as Tom Traboyevich, but you see what Cody Walker did on the weekend. He basically, on his own, was taking on the Dragons. You add Latrell, the next pass outside him, and it's a completely different story. So I will reserve that from, you get 20 games out of Latrell Mitchell, you'll win 18 of them, or you'll win 17 of them. And, that's going to take you a long way in the competition. From a long-term bet, the market snapped it up. I think it's gone, the 15.5 plus the 15.5 in the handicap market for the St. George Illawarra Dragons. So you've converted me, Gerard, on the back of that performance and those performances of those younger guys. So I think we're into 11s for that now, aren't we, Tristan?
We are. They've been the best back team in that market. They're into $11, and the market is now. Let me just grab that. Yeah, so it's the Dragons plus 15.5 at $11. They've been very, very well backed. I think one of the members on this show has declared them quite confidently, which he's explained his reasoning. And if they make the top 8, they'll go a long way to winning that regular season handicap as well.
Jimmy, again, this has been a concern of the last 12 months on this podcast, and I probably need to have a conversation with Tracy from the Shire and get your mobile moved over to a more reliable service, because had your mobile actually been working, you might have got 17.5 instead of 15.5, but that's okay. I'm sure Tristan will still let you on at 15.5, and I think at 15.5, the Dragons will still give you a long shake into that minor premiership handicap.
The only issue there, Gerard, is that when you specifically time those texts to go out when Jimmy's on flight mode, we need to give him the heads up so he can get the Wi-Fi to tune in so he can have an access the site at the time.
Well, I actually sent him about 1:05 because I know he's on radio and he's in the middle of giving his welcome into the afternoon. And then all of a sudden he's got hands flying all different directions trying to place a bet at the same time.
When you do speak to Tracy from Carringbuck, can you send him my best too? He doesn't speak to me anymore, so...
Well, I think she's listening to the podcast and starting to realise why. Well, some of these winning bets that she should have been picking up and spending, she's missing.
Can I get spaghetti meatballs as one of our lunch bets? She does a great spaghetti meatball. I had a look at the top point scorer market. Ruben Garrick, very short here, but I made a presumption that Ryan Pappenhausen was going to play near enough to a full season. Of course, he didn't last year, 14 tries in 15 games. So, and remember, he scored 4 tries in a 10-minute period against the Brisbane Broncos. He also kicked goals at 85% last year. So just knowing the way they work there at the Melbourne Storm, there's clear that he's going to put a focus on that. So at $5.50, I thought Ryan Pappenhausen, they'll score a heap of points, the Melbourne Storm, we know that. I thought he was my option in the point scorer market.
Well, I thought the right edge winger is also going to give the top try scorer a bit of a shake too. You know, new Xavier Coates on that right edge, he's going to have a picnic picking up a lot of tries for that team. The other guy, I don't know that he may end up being in the top 4 or 5 try scorers, but he'll certainly be a favourite of mine, and in week 1 as well as an anytime try scorer will be the Hammer playing at fullback for the Cowboys. I think he's in for a very big season. I think fullback's going to be a great spot for him. He looked really good in the trial last weekend. He's fit. He's over a few little injury issues he had last year. And now that he knows he's playing number 1, that kid just reeks talent.
It's amazing how a couple of weeks ago, and you know, we're still, all of us have mentioned the Cowboys were expecting to finish down the bottom of the ladder, but it went from a couple of weeks ago who's going to play where for the Cowboys, and now it's a case of who are they going to leave out of this side. They've got a couple of strong trial performances by the halves, and then, as you say, the Hammer, and then you got Valentine Holmes into a different position. Yeah, if they get a little bit of confidence early with that extra home ground advantage as well, they might cause a few upsets there at home if they can use that to their advantage too. And obviously, it's going to be key as to how Jason Taumalolo fronts up, because that's the big elephant in the room, I think.
Well, the other one too is Chad Townsend, right? And I'm biased because he's an old neighbour of mine, but and you can argue whether they've paid too much for him. It doesn't matter. Well done to you, Chad. But one thing I do know, he'll be the best trainer, and he'll be ultra professional, and he'll also be great for those younger players in the club, and from a leadership point of view too. So it's interesting that, you know, all those people who were critical of Chad Townsend going up there, and he's found some stability in the halves there, and you know, we're starting to think more positive things about the North Queensland Cowboys. Did you have a thought about top try scorer? I know you mentioned Xavier Coates. I don't know whether you heard on the SEN program with Cameron Smith, they interviewed Craig Bellamy, and they said, how's Xavier Coates going? And I thought it was almost imperceptible, but a giggle came out of, you don't often get a giggle out of Coach Bellamy.
No.
I don't think he can believe he's got this ferocious athlete on the wing, and you know, he was good before he went to Melbourne. You can, if anyone says, I'm surprised Xavier Coates is having the best season of his NRL career, then knock me over with a feather.
Well, if there's a man that turns water into wine under his system, it's Bellamy. He is just the best, and been doing it for 17 years. And we'll touch on this next week, but the Melbourne Storm in 17 years have not lost in round 1. And I'll give you the tip, they won't be losing again this year either. So we'll make that 18. But Jimmy, I just wanted to go back to the Cowboys for a moment. I've been a fan of Todd Payten's for the last 2 years. I thought the way he was able to influence and turn things around with a young list that at times looked a little bit delusional when he took over the Warriors was very impressive. And then he probably walked into a bit of a firestorm last year at the Cowboys. He did a radio interview in Queensland here yesterday. It actually went for about 15 minutes and was very in-depth, and he was really prepared to open up and touch on a lot of things. And a couple of the points that you made just there, one was he talked about Chad Townsend and the influence that he has already had. And his words were, whatever we paid, I'd pay more now.
Wow.
He said his influence off the field and on the field has been absolutely outstanding. And then he gave an example about his influence on the right edge and the young fella he's got outside him and what he's taught him in the last 4 weeks about where he's got to be and how he's got to play. And then some of the other things that he's taught their middle forwards about where they need to be and what roles they need to take on different tackles was very enlightening. Then he also touched on Jason Tomolomo, and he was very open at the fact that he made a mistake last year in saying what he said after game 1 at Penrith Park, and the fact that he openly criticised Jason. He said, that was my error. He said, Jason and I have had a lot of talks about that. He talked about his game time, where he wants to play him this year. It will be in the middle. The fact that, the guy last year had 3 different broken hands and a number of other couple of injuries and really struggled with a season of stability, and he's looking forward to he being their best player this year. The fact that he's moved Val Holmes to left edge and in the centres, and said that Val Holmes will be playing left centre this season. That won't be moving or changing unless we have major injuries. And the fact that Val has been one of their best trainers and applying himself so hard on that left edge, and then the impact of the young fella at the back. So it was a very positive conversation, and I certainly could see the signs of that in their trial last weekend.
Right, the other one, I want to nominate a couple for my top try scorer. Top of the market there is Tom Traboyevich, and you say, oh yeah, well, he's a great player and he sets them all up and all that. He scored 28 tries in 18 games last year. Absolutely phenomenal. So all things being equal, Tom Traboyevich, I think he got 5 hat tricks last year, which is just off the charts. The other one I want to make mention of, $51, Sione Katoa on the right wing for the Cronulla Sharks. I thought he represented a bit of value. 9 tries in 13 games last year. I expect them to be scoring more tries this year. I love Jesse Raymond to continue to develop his passing game, but he chases a kick better than anyone. Sione Katoa was the one that I liked it. A bit of value there at $51, Tristan.
Yeah, no, well, I agree with that. And then he looks enormous value, particularly if we all expect the Sharks to continue their improvement. And then even you look down a little bit further, we know what Matt Ikuvalu did when he chimed in for a few games for the Roosters, and he's at $67. So if there is the upside about the Sharks that we all believe, there's a few players there at a little bit of value. The one that's an interesting talking point there is Tedesco. We know how many he sets up, but he's at $51 too. So it's a fascinating market to bet on. Xavier Coates, as if he can improve to the level we think he will, from where he was already an Origin player, it's scary.
That's really interesting, that Tedesco market, because remember how he changed his game last year to play like Keary because there was no Keary. If Keary stays fit, then Tedesco plays like a fullback, and he's that one pass further out. And that dummy and go is really interesting. So if you want to back James Tedesco to be the leading try scorer, keep praying for Luke Keary to stay healthy.
And he's slicing on a right edge or back through the middle. He's just knows his way through a hole, and his timing off Keary in particular is just to perfection.
Yeah. We will go through all the games of round 1 next week. Gerard's already, by the sounds of it, found himself some bets there. So looking forward to. Can't wait. Some long-term markets there, as Tristan says. You can really form opinions early doors, develop some strategies, and enjoy the ride all the way to the season's end, Gerard.
Jimmy, if any of our listeners want to take a little bit more serious at the moment on reading the play, we have an offer where we've got a season pass. That gives you 30 weeks of coverage. We do all of this every week in written form, all of our bets, all of my game handicaps, all of the tips, all of the plays early in the week. So if anyone wants to play and get involved, we've already had a very good range of support over recent weeks, but just head to the website. It's all there, nice and easy. If not, drop me a line.
Let's get to a bet for the racing over the course of this weekend. Webbed feet preferable for all our runners. We've hit a little bit of form there with some of our tips of recent times. So, Gerard, you better direct the listeners to where you want them to go this weekend.
Well, Jimmy, I'm so sick of running second. I'm going to throw a little endorsement to this, that if this doesn't win, I'll throw $50 at Passing On Clothing anyway. And if it does, well, there'll be $50 going their way out of the winnings. But let's go to Flemington. I wanted to look for a dry track, and gee, I just thought this looked one of the better bets of the day anywhere on Saturday. Race 5, number 1, a horse called Overpass. Out of the Beyond Baker stable, it's had 2 runs back in Sydney where the form around it's just enormous. It won it first up at Weight for Age in the Group 2, and the horses that finished behind it were Amoni and then Forbidden Love, that have since come out and won. Amoni in particular picking up a Group 1 last weekend. That's an extremely strong rating. Second up, it ran second to Lost and Running. I think Lost and Running's a very, very smart horse that now is very well fancied in a Newmarket next week in Flemington. So I thought this Saturday, Flemington, race 5, number 1, Overpass, $2.70 at the moment. I expect it probably starts far, far closer to $2 come Saturday. It's my bet this week, and I'm also going to throw a $50 either way little guarantee behind it. So, Jimmy, can you make sure that you leave that one alone, and I'll just shout you something if it does happen to win?
Well, I promise. I'll stay away from it. You, with all those seconds, it reminds me of the Greg Norman. Was he on top for 3 days and then came second? So, yeah. Moving away from that, Tristan, are you going to delight the listeners and the viewers with a tip this week?
Well, I'm going to give an opinion. I can't. At the moment, you can't. You could take the field, but I'm really keen, and the trading team's very, very keen to take on Zaki in the Blamey Stakes, race 6. So I just think it is a touch unders where it needs to be. I think first up, I think there was some preparation issues there last prep. I just don't want to be taking 220 about a horse that I think there's a few too many question marks about. There's already been big money for the 10. Inspirational Girl, number 5, Mr. Brightside, has been backed as well. So I just think there's an opportunity for an outsider in that race. Maybe as you get closer to the race jumping, you can take the field option. But yeah, from a trading point of view, I am very much keen to lay Zaki.
And Tristan, we're right in the middle of this Group 1 season, and we've got Group 1 races this weekend again, into the coming weeks, then into the Sydney Carnival. I know that you guys are taking on some amazing limits on a Saturday in the 30 minutes leading into any of these races.
Yeah, and that's something for all racing fans. If you have a look on our website, we elevate limits once the official prices come out, which is 25 minutes before the race jumps on any metropolitan race. That's when our best of the best limit stops, and our the official prices do come out. Now, all of the professionals are well aware of this. For every Group 1 race, we bet to win 10,000 early and to win 25,000 in that last 25 minutes. That's everyone. Every single punter in the country has got access to those limits. All the professionals are aware of this. So if you're trying to work out between the 2 horses that you want to back, look at that push between the 20-minute mark and the 25-minute mark. The professionals are all stepping in there, waiting for the clock to tick down to 25, and it's had an amazing strike rate. It's in those group races, it's amazing how those horses at firm in that period are very, very hard to beat. They seem to go an extra leg. So if you're trying to formulate an opinion on a race, make sure you jump on the TopSport's around window, look at the 20 to 25-minute mark.
So, Jimmy, you've been finding us winners each week over the last number of weeks. Have you got something you like this week?
I do. Just on what Tristan mentioned there, still okay for me to get into my one to win for the place punters as well. We okay with that, the last 25 minutes?
Of course, Jimmy. We love it, and that's where the special best of the best option comes available for you.
Okay, Randwick, heavy 10, race 6, number 3, Marzu, Team Snowden, off the back of a win, trialling well, second up on its home track, sit off a hot speed. I think the quote opened at 380. Last I saw into 320. So I'll have the $100 cash on a race 6, number 3, right on the Lionel Rose. Thanks, Tristan.
It's been a very, very good go. And sometimes the horses confirm on when you've got wet tracks and it's due to scratchings, and they always look like they're exaggerated moves. There's no scratching out of this race at the moment. That's a very, very strong move in a race. It's a big betting race. So the punters are stepping in. Obviously, one first up, going second up with Sam Clipperton on board. So it's going to be very hard to beat.
Hey, Jimmy, I think we might have backed that as a reading the play tip a couple of weeks ago at $5 when it won first up.
Yeah, okay. Well, mate, I'm happy to follow that in again,
There might be another one that we backed a couple of weeks ago later in the day in Sydney that I think will win again too. But anyway, we'll see what we can find there. Now, we need to write down our long-term season plays. So, Jimmy, what's your angle going to be?
Long-term season play. What are we talking about? The Dragons?
For the NRL. You're going to Dragons plus 15.5, are you?
Well, I've got a couple of options here. Sione Katara at $51, leading try scorer. Tommy T, Ryan Pappenhausen at $5.50. Which one do you want?
Well, I think
if you want me to come back as sponsor next year, don't be putting 100 on a 50-1 shot.
I think Tristan's message this morning, Jimmy, was just one would do. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to go Ryan Pappenhausen, leading point scorer at $5.50.
Okay.
And you're going, what was your option again, Gerard?
I'll go to Dragons and make the top 8 at $3.20.
Yes. And I'm going to, right, like as we touched on, I think the Tigers are undervalued, but I'm not going to take an even money shot for the end of season bet. I'm going to take the Rabbitohs to miss the 8 at $3.70, just looking for a little bit of value there.
Okay. I'm shocked it hasn't involved the Titans in some way, shape or form. But anyway. Hey, that's good, boys. As you say, 8 sleeps away and we're into season 2022. Can't wait for that. Great fun again. All the very best to everyone who follows the tips over the course of the weekend. Have a great weekend, boys. And we'll do it all again next week.
Thanks, Jimmy. Safe travels home. Hopefully it doesn't storm too much on you.
And Jimmy, any of those Raiders, Titans, Knights, Broncos, Tigers, Bulldogs, or Warriors fans are a little bit upset, I'll just send them through to you, okay?
At reading the play is the best way to voice your concerns right there. Thanks,
See you guys.